Hi, and welcome back to the Huddle Psychology YouTube channel. And this is our fifth video in total, but the fourth in the line of psychological manipulation theme. Welcoming you back to this session. Hope the last three sessions and the last three videos were useful to you. We dealt with, just a small recap, we dealt with gaslighting, love bombing, and we dealt with, what was the other one? What was the third one? We dealt with guilt tripping. Yes, that was the third video that we took, the third concept that we dealt with. Today, we continue with the same theme, but a different tactic altogether. This one's an interesting one. Today, we are going to talk about psychological triangulation. Yes, you heard me right. Psychological triangulation. So here, this is a psychological manipulation technique where, let's call it the manipulator, right? The manipulator is going to try and create tension between the other two people within the triangle, try to create confusion between the other two people and create dependency on the manipulator. Why? Once again, to maintain control and power. So, triadic relationships, that's where this most usually happens. So, what is triangulation? Triangulation is basically a manipulation technique where the manipulator tries to create disharmony among two other people within the triangle. And the manipulator is basically the main node at the top of the triangle, trying to create disharmony and confusion and emotional turmoil among others within the triangle. So that is called psychological triangulation. So let's once again, as you might have now become used to our format, we take a look at a few examples to drive home the definitions. Let's take two examples. It can happen within friendships. So you can have a friend coming up to you and say that, hey, I heard he was talking behind your back. But nothing more than that. There is no more information given to you. They just create a sense of confusion. They create a sense of tension within you and create a sense of distrust within you. And then you feel that, okay, fine, if that person said this about me, then, this is what I feel. And in order to deal with the situation, instead of directly communicating with the other person, you might enter into some sort of psychological distress. And at the same time, the manipulator goes to the other person, the other friend, and say something exactly the opposite to the other person, that you said something bad about them. And so this way, the main strategy is divide and conquer. This is what the manipulator loves to do when it comes to psychological triangulation. They divide the two friends and get you and your friend in conflict so that the manipulator right at the top can watch the show and be in control. So that is what typically happens in a triangulated, manipulated friendship scenario. It can also happen in workplaces. So a manager who's managing, say, two people can come to you. You're one of the persons, and there's another person involved. The manager first comes to you and says that Mr. A doesn't feel that you are contributing enough. You are surprised, you're taken aback, and that builds a sense of unhealthy competition between you and the other employee, the other teammate. Similarly, the manager goes and talks to that person, saying that you said that person is not contributing enough. So, once again, The manager creates distrust between the two people and create unhealthy amount of competition, and then what results is more emotional confusion rather than a healthy team functioning. But why do people do this? We will look at it. What are the symptoms though when it comes to psychological triangulation? There are several symptoms to watch out for. Some are subtle, some are not subtle. But first and foremost, there is very clearly an erosion of trust. When the manipulator is playing you and the other person against each other, soon there will be very little trust between the relationships. So, an erosion of trust is one of the first telltale signs that there is manipulation going on. Secondly, there is tremendous amount of emotional confusion, because creating this unhealthy amount of, say, perhaps competition between each other, distrust between each other, confusion between each other, can create emotional fatigue, can create emotional confusion. So that's another symptom and sign of psychological triangulation. Low self esteem. To keep playing to the whims and fancies of the manipulator and dancing to their tunes can really reduce your energy levels, can lower your self esteem in the process. Dependence is a big factor that you need to watch out for. Remember, the manipulator is playing you and the other person against each other, and both persons depend on the manipulator for reality, for confirmation, for validation, for information, etc., for trust. So there will be increasing dependence on that one individual. And if you feel that within a triadic relationship, there is a need for more and more dependence on one single person, then you know that the triadic relationship is perhaps not very healthy, and there is some amount, if not a lot, of manipulation going on. And finally, there is emotional exhaustion, right? With all of this confusion happening, not knowing who to trust, who not to trust, there is a tremendous amount of exhaustion that can come your way. You are emotionally drained trying to figure out what is real, what is unreal, who to trust, who not to trust, who is my friend, who is not my friend, should I compete, should I not compete. All of this can add tremendous amount of stress and strain in your life, and you can find yourself emotionally exhausted. So these are some symptoms to really watch out for, and if these tend to be happening, then you know for a fact that there is psychological triangulation happening in your relationship. Now let's come to discussing why individuals do this. You might have you are now beginning to pick up some patterns when it comes to manipulation, right? Again, this is not very different from some of the other tactics and techniques we looked at. One of the major, if not the first, reason for exercising this tactic is to control you and the other person, and to get power over you and the other person, clean and clear. Power and control is a driving factor in all manipulation techniques, right? So that is one of the fundamental drivers. Secondly, avoiding accountability. So when there is confusion and distrust between you and the other person, and there are issues and there are challenges that have happened, that take place within the relationship, the manipulator can very easily stand back and say that he or she is not responsible. So they can push back, and not take any accountability, push back and take no responsibility for anything, and say that it is, he said this, she said this, and let them fight it out. So that way, the manipulator is a mere spectator of this confusion, and thereby gets away from taking any sort of responsibility or accountability. So that's another reason why manipulators use triangulation as a way of manipulating other people. Thirdly, validation and attention is a very important contributor. Why? Because once again, manipulators are insecure and they love the attention that they get. If they are able to play people against each other, they are dividing and conquering. They know that ultimately they are the centerpiece, and that people are going to turn to them for answers. They love that attention. So that can be another reason, and that is another reason why people use this technique. And as a extension of this, fear of rejection. Fear of rejection, fear of insecurity is another driving factor by making you and the other people within the triangle dependent on the manipulator. What effectively the manipulator does is to try and solve their insecurity problem by making you and the other person dependent on the manipulator for reality, for information, etc., etc. So insecurity is a major driver for this technique. So having understood why people do this, how can you protect yourself? What can you do to help yourself? Very simply, if there is a triangle happening, remember, there is indirect communication happening. That's how it usually works. Indirect communication is one of the main ways that the manipulator creates confusion and creates dependencies. Another way is that they create rivalries between you and the other person in the triangle. That's the second way. So the first way is indirect communication. He said this, she said this kind of thing, and then creating rivalry between you and the other person, then controlling the amount of information. Controlling the amount of information that is let out. They don't divulge all the information. Only bits and pieces come out. They'll tell you a little bit, they'll tell the other person a little bit, and then everything, it's all hazy, it's all smokes and mirrors, and there is more confusion in the process. And finally, manipulators play the victim. They always say, they put themselves in the position as if they are the ones who are suffering from the activities of you and the other person in the triangle. These are some tactics that the manipulator uses. So when it comes to protecting ourselves, the natural first step to do, the first step to take is to communicate directly. If the manipulator comes and tells you that, hey, he said something about you, then the first thing that perhaps you should do is to go to that person and have a direct conversation. Instead of sitting back and believing the manipulator and getting ensnared in that triangle, getting stuck and trapped in that triangle, and having negative thoughts in your mind and cooking up negative stories in your mind. Instead of doing that, go directly to that person who the manipulator is talking about and ask if it is true, and have a straightforward open communication. So communicate directly. That's one thing that is very, very important for you to do. Set boundaries. With every manipulative tactic that is put against you, setting boundaries is always going to be important. You always have to set very healthy boundaries around people, so that you know very much, very clearly which ones people are allowed to cross and which people are not allowed to cross. So you know how you're going to be treated, you know, and you communicate assertively that you will not be treated in a certain way. If the manipulator comes back to you and gives you incomplete information about this and that and events and people, then you can very well say that, no, I am sorry, that doesn't stick with me, that doesn't work with me. Please give me the full information. Otherwise, this doesn't work. So it's very, very clear for you to set boundaries. It's very important for you to set boundaries. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, don't engage. Simply don't engage in the triangle. The manipulator is trying to create that triangle. That triangle is a fictitious triangle. It's not a real triangle. The manipulator is doing it in order for him or her to have control over you, to have power over you. So it's a fake triangle. It is not a triangle of positive relationship. It is not positive teamwork. Instead, it is about manipulation and control. So, if there is a situation like this that is coming across in your life, don't engage with that triangle. Don't believe in the half truths and the half lies of the manipulator. Instead, communicate directly to the person and don't engage in the triangle, right? So, not engaging in the triangle is an extension of communicating directly with that third party. So, do not engage in the triangle. And we talked about documentation. We talked about that in when we talked about the first episode, when we discussed gaslighting, where it's all about your sense of reality and you need to start documenting things to ground yourself in reality. It's true here too. It's important for you to write down so that you can ground yourself in reality. So keep documents, keep evidence, document the patterns of what is going on so that you are able to then step back and take a stand in terms of how you want to possibly deal with the situation and deal with these relationships. And finally, if things are getting out of control and it is becoming increasingly challenging to deal with such personalities, then seek professional help. If the amount of stress and strain is becoming overwhelming, the emotional fatigue is overwhelming, by all means, take professional help, seek professional help so that you're better able to process your emotions, so that you're better able to process your mental well-being, take care of yourself, self-care. A therapist may give you a good external perspective in terms of how to clearly see the triangle, clearly see the manipulation, and bring about more clarity in your relationships. So seek external help if required when it comes to certain extreme situations and cases. So that's how you kind of take care of yourself. Now, again, as always, if there is someone as your friend, your family member, colleague, who is caught up in a triangle like this, there are things that you can do, as always, to help them. Listen to them without judgment. Encourage them to seek professional help always if things are not working out for them through the usual channels. Encourage them to, as I mentioned before, encourage them to make direct communication with individuals. Do not engage in the triangle. And please, by all means, validate their feelings. It's important to be there, be present, and validate your friends, validate your family members' feelings so that they know that their feelings matter, they are real, they are not fiction, and help them not dismiss it completely. And then, as I said before, help them seek professional help as well if you feel that that is what they need. So that's how you can help others who are already caught up in a triangle like this. So this was all about psychological triangulation. The definition is pretty straightforward. It is a method of manipulating you in a triangle by dividing and conquering, by creating confusion between you and another person in a triangle. There are various methods that manipulator uses to create confusion. That is through indirect communication. They withhold information, they control information, they create rivalries between you and the other person, and they are most likely to play victim. So these are some ways that they really exercise their power over you, and you know that you are in a triangle and you might be in trouble when there is a certain amount of loss in trust, there is erosion of trust, there is emotional confusion, your self-esteem is going down, there is a greater and growing, disturbing, and unhealthy amount of dependence on the manipulator, and finally, you feel exhausted. There is a huge amount of emotional exhaustion. That's when you know that you might be in a triangle. So this was what psychological triangulation is all about. And I hope that this video has given you at least a small amount of information, brief amount of information about this technique that manipulators use. It happens in friendships, it happens in workplaces, and remember, it can happen in any kind of relationships, be it home, workplace, schools, friendships, anywhere, wherever there are human relationships, psychological triangulation can take place. The motivation being to divide and conquer and to gain power and control over you and other people, and so that they can drive their agenda and get the maximum out of everybody else concerned. That's what manipulation is all about at the end of the day. It's not about your well-being, it is about control and power. So I hope that this video was useful as far as this topic is concerned. As always, there is a long form blog article in our blog, huddlepsychology.substack.com. Please visit that link if you want to get a deep dive into the subject. The article will come with suggested readings and references if you want to dig deeper into the subject and explore the subject in greater detail. Please leave us feedback so that we can continue to improve our content. We are new to this. Please bear with us as we keep improving our content. Please like and share if you found this video useful. Like and share the content as far and wide as possible so that we can spread the awareness, right? We want to have more people literate about such manipulative techniques so that they can break free from the cycle of manipulation, and so that nobody suffers alone. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel so that you get updates every now and then when we post new and interesting content on the platform. So that's it from me this time. So until our next video, until our next session, here's me signing off. Keep flourishing until next time.